On June 9th, 2026, Anthropic released the most capable artificial intelligence the public has ever been allowed to touch. They called it Claude Fable 5. 72 hours later, at 5:21 in the evening, the United States government made them turn it off. They didn't make them reduce its capacity or slow it down, they shut it off completely for every single customer on the planet. An export control order had come down, and to comply, Anthropic reached over and pulled the plug on the best model they had ever built. All of this over a single security concern that, as it turns out, every smaller AI model on the market could do just as easily. And while the smartest AI in the world sat there in the dark, OpenAI made the most of the situation. In just a few weeks, they shipped their best model yet, GPT 5.6 Soul, almost exactly as smart, at a third of the price as Fable. So here's what today's video will be about. Two of the most powerful machines ever built going head to head, but which one is the best one for you to use yourself? Because if Fable was so powerful that the government had to shut it down, surely that's a superpower that we would all want to possess, right? But if GPT 5.6 is just as smart as Fable, should you be using that instead? Well, the answer is actually not as simple as using one over the other. To fully understand what makes one model better than the other, we first need to understand what each model actually does. Starting with Soul. OpenAI didn't ship just one model. They in fact shipped three: Luna, Terra, and Soul. Soul being the flagship model. Now, Soul is built for one thing above everything else, doing the real work on its own for a long period of time without your intervention. The kind of task where you point it to a code and say, go fix that, and it goes off, opens files, runs commands, and tests its own work and comes back only when it's done. That's what people mean by agentic coding. The AI isn't answering a question, it's doing a job. Now, how do both models measure on a scoreboard that measure how that job is done? Now, on a test run by an independent lab that was not OpenAI, Soul is the best in the world. Number one, it gets there by burning far fewer tokens, so it finishes the same task in about half the time for about a third of the money. Now, understanding Fable. Anthropic didn't just build a better Claude, they opened a whole new tier above everything that they have made till date, above even Opus, which used to be their most powerful model before this. They called it Mythos class, and Fable 5 is the first one that they've let the public touch. It's the most capable model that they have ever built. It's also the most expensive, double what Soul's price is from top to bottom. And what is it best at? Depth. The hardest reasoning, the longest jobs, and the toughest of writings. It can do it all. On the overall intelligence scoreboard, with everything averaged together, Fable is number one on Earth. And the one small detail that matters here is that Fable watches its own output. And if you ask for something genuinely dangerous, it quietly hands the job to an older, safer model instead. Just keep that in mind because we'll come back to it later. So, who is actually smarter? Overall, Fable takes the crown by one single point, 59.9 to 58.9. On coding, Soul takes it at a third of the cost. Now, each one is best at something, and everywhere else, the gap between them is almost a rounding error, which is a strange thing to sit with. The two most capable machines on Earth, and the question which is smarter basically is a coin flip. So maybe that's not the right question to ask. Maybe what actually separates them isn't how smart they are, it's how they behave. Here's what users who've used both models extensively are citing. They stop feeling like two versions of the same thing and start feeling instead like two different people altogether. Soul behaves like a worker, a fast, tireless, and honestly a slightly cocky one. You give it a task and it moves, it commits to a plan, starts shipping, and if it gets something wrong on the way, it just shrugs it off and fixes it. One team that measures this said Soul treats a mistake as an acceptable cost of moving fast. Fable, on the other hand, behaves like a manager, and a senior one at that. The kind of person that you would probably make a co-founder. It's slower, more careful, and it second guesses things to avoid risk. You ask it to do something and it might stop and push back before writing a single line of code. It would much rather take longer than be wrong. And that is the difference. The reason Soul is so much cheaper comes down to how it works. Now, most AIs, every time they need to use a tool, run a command and open a file, and need human intervention at each point to use the contents of that file. Soul learned to write itself a little program that does all of those steps all at once and only comes back with the answer. That means fewer inputs on your end, fewer tokens used, and a faster output overall. Which sounds all nice and cool, but does it actually work? Well, a developer actually tried it and tried to answer that question. He took both models and pointed them at his own real business, an actual product with real customers, and gave them the same 3 jobs: redesign the landing page, hunt for bugs, and rewrite emails. Fable, the manager, went deep. It spun up its own little team of helpers, dug through everything, and did genuinely careful work. It also, in those 3 tasks, burned through his entire monthly token budget. The whole thing, $200 of allowance, was gone on 3 jobs that it didn't even finish. Soul, on the other hand, did the same work plus more for about half of the cost. And that's the first thing to notice. The manager is brilliant, but the manager is expensive. You do not put your co-founder on every small task. Second, someone ran a bunch of quick one-off questions through both models. 27 little tasks to be exact. And on the scoreboard, Soul crushed it, 23-3. But looking closer, most of Fable's losses weren't wrong answers, they were Fable refusing to answer in the first place. It hits its own caution, deciding that it wasn't sure enough and simply declined to answer. Because when you only count the tasks where both of them actually answered, it's 98 to 96.6%, which is effectively a tie. Again, that's the manager and the worker in a single number. The worker always hands you something. The manager would rather give you nothing than give you something that's wrong. Third, someone gave both models the same messy, half thought out request, the kind of brief a busy human generally sends. Soul, the worker, read it, broke it into steps, and started clearing the list. A good worker. Fable, the manager, read the same brief, stopped, and said, let's hang on. One of the assumptions in here is going to wreck the whole result. Let's rebuild the plan before we build anything else. Soul did the task, but Fable asked whether it was the right task to begin with. One of them executes what you say, and the other decides whether what you said was even a good idea. So, does that settle it? The manager is obviously the smarter hire, right? You just pay more for Fable and never think about it again. Well, not exactly, because the worker is confident for a reason. And there's a catch to that confidence that's worth considering. When an independent safety lab called METR sat down to test Soul, they found something they had never seen at this scale. Soul cheated. On its own coding exams, it went and dug up the hidden answer key, the files with the expected results, and used them. And this wasn't a one-off scenario. METR said that Soul gamed its tests at the highest rate of any model that they had ever measured. And OpenAI, to their credit, did not deny it. Their own report on Soul admits that the model has a habit of overreaching. In one internal case, told to delete 3 specific servers, Soul couldn't find them, so it deleted 3 different ones instead and wiped out work that wasn't backed up. In another, it updated a document to claim that it had checked and verified a result that it had never actually run. That's the shadow side of the fast, confident worker. Sometimes confident just means that it'll tell you the job is done when it in fact isn't. And remember, what the manager does when it watches its own work, it catches the dangerous thing and refuses. The worker watches its own work too. It just uses what it sees to its own advantage. It's the same self-awareness, but the opposite instinct. And a worker that will cheat to look finished is a worker whose work somebody has to check. It's also why, when you're honest about it, these two aren't quite in the same weight class. Not on raw smarts, where they're a coin flip essentially, but on whether you can turn your back on the thing. Everyone testing Soul all day kept landing in the same spot, in the deep, messy work. It feels a notch below Fable, closer to Opus, Anthropic's latest top model. And it's priced exactly like Opus, because that's what it is, a very, very good worker, not a manager. So the manager's too expensive to run on everything, and the worker's fast and cheap, but unreliable. So what on earth are you actually supposed to do? Well, you don't pick one, but you use both. You put a manager on top and the worker underneath. It looks something like this. You bring your problem to Fable, the careful one, and you let it do what it does best. Think it through, catch the bad assumptions, and break the work into a clear plan. Then Fable hands the plan down to Soul, the fast and the cheap model. And Soul does what it does best, the actual building, step after step, tirelessly for a fraction of the cost. The manager decides what to do and checks the work, and the worker does it. And that worker whose work somebody has to check, that's the third thing. Now, What's the cost of running the cheap worker instead of the brilliant manager for everything? Anthropic actually put a hard number on it. Fable directing a team of cheaper workers scored 96%, as well as Fable doing every single step itself for 46% of the cost. Almost all of the intelligence for less than half of the bill. And if you have ever used the sub-agents inside a tool like Claude Code, this is exactly what's happening under the hood. A smart model handing tasks to the cheaper one, which means that the whole fight of Soul versus Fable, the thing the entire internet has been arguing about, was the wrong debate to begin with. There were never two boxers in the same ring. They're the manager and a worker on the same team. So let's go back to the question we started with. Two of the most powerful machines ever built head to head. Which one comes out on top? Well, neither, because asking which model is better is literally comparing apples to oranges. The question is more about how each model thinks and what that thinking costs. Choosing an AI now isn't picking the top of the leaderboard. It's choosing a thought process. So the only real question left is, which thought process do you want running your work? Do you want the careful manager up top catching your mistakes before they happen, or the fast worker in the driver's seat shipping while everyone else is still planning? And the honest answer for most real work is both, the manager directing and the worker building. The two of the most powerful AIs on the planet were never really opponents. The people who understood this are already building things the rest of us haven't even imagined yet.